Welcome to the 247 Sports YouTube page. I'm Emily Proud. Chris Hummer is here with us to do some Week 8 winners and losers. Let's get it started with the winners. A lot of people wrote off Oregon when Georgia handed them a Week 1 beatdown. After managing just 3 points in a game, they now scored 40 or more in every single one since. They rattled off 6 straight wins and sit high atop the Pac-12. So how much credit does West Coast Bo deserve here, Chris?
West Coast Bo is a vibe, and I think he deserves a ton of credit. Bo Nix is playing the best football of his career. He is someone we had rated as a 5-star coming out of high school, and he's living up to those expectations finally. I guess all it took was a 2,200-mile change of scenery for him to unlock his potential. And we saw that against UCLA. Bo Nix threw for 283 yards and 5 touchdowns. He ran for 51 more yards. He's only the third he's only the third Oregon quarterback since 2000 to have multiple games of 5+ touchdowns. He's playing the best football of his career, and it's made all the difference for the Ducks. I think everyone was quick to dismiss Oregon after their Week 1 blowout loss to Georgia, but that feels like it happened a decade ago. This is a totally different team right now. They're ripping people apart offensively. Dan Lanning has an opportunistic defense, and we saw Dan Lanning show abilities as a clock management guy and a play caller early in his career that you wouldn't expect for somebody so young. So Oregon's in a really good place, and I'd consider them a co-favorite along with maybe USC to win the Pac-12 right now. The vibes are great around West Coast Bo.
Certainly. Hearing a little Heisman whispers as well, so you know he must be playing well. It's that change of scenery, right? We've got another guy with a change of scenery. Jayden Daniels seeming to really be figuring out LSU's offense. Now 11 total touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, back-to-back 45-point performances. This is in conference play in the SEC. Are they the second best team in the SEC West, Chris?
I think they are. This is back to normal for LSU. I mean, for a long time, once you got to that first week in November, you knew Alabama and LSU would play in one of the most consequential games of the year. Both teams were going to be ranked. Both teams usually had a chance to win the SEC West. And both teams were in position at that point in the year to challenge for a playoff spot. LSU hasn't held up its end of the bargain the last 2 years, but that's changing right now under Brian Kelly. I expect LSU to be ranked by the time they play Alabama on November 5th, and it's going to be an awesome game with SEC West implications. LSU playing the way it is right now can win the SEC West. Jayden Daniels is playing, I hate saying this again, the best football of his career, and I guess he just likes the humidity a little bit better than the dry heat of Arizona because he's balling out for LSU. I had a staffer at LSU tell me the other day he thinks Jayden's cooking with gas, and we're seeing a totally different side of LSU with Jayden playing this well.
Maybe we should consider moving. These change of sceneries are really helping out these quarterbacks. Maybe it could be something for us too. Well, let's go from the West to the East, just like that. South Carolina is 5-2 with wins over Kentucky and Texas A&M in their last 2 games. Spencer Rattler hasn't been particularly impressive in those 2 wins, coming away with just 1 touchdown and 1 interception total. So how is Shane Beamer's squad getting it done, Chris?
I wish I had an answer for that. I watch South Carolina quite a bit, and I always come away just confused about how they figure out how to way to win these games. But that's a credit to Shane Beamer and himself. He's 6-2 in games decided by 10 points or less in his career at South Carolina, and the best coaches figure out a way to win those games. That just strikes me as a team that's well coached and pretty disciplined. South Carolina on paper isn't particularly impressive. Their offense is average, and I think a lot of fans would likely tell you it feels below average. Their defense is good, but not great. They turn the ball over far more often than they take it away, but South Carolina just figures out a way to win games, and that's a credit to Shane Beamer. Like, I say vibes quite a bit. It's a bad habit, but I would just say the vibes around Columbia and Shane Beamer are really good, and that's what you want in a head coach. You want somebody who inspires your players. You want somebody who figures out a way to win these close games. And given that South Carolina right now is a top 15 class in 2023, like, the future seems really bright in Columbia.
Yeah, it's a good thing that games are not played on paper because they are much better when they're played on the field for this South Carolina team. Now, Chris, you've selected a few losers from the weekend, and it cannot get much worse for those Hawkeyes. You put it best in your story on 247sports.com. You said, quote, "Iowa's offense is an abomination. Anyone who has watched them play will A, never get that time back, and B, knows that that statement's not hyperbole." Your best line, though, is here, though. You're calling the offense stubborn. So can it change? Will it change? Or are we just stuck with this abomination?
It feels like we're stuck, and I think that's the most damning part about Iowa's offense. Like Iowa, for a long time, was an average offense, but that was good enough with its defense. They were built around big, burly offensive linemen, a power run game scheme. They would be effective in play action, and they did enough offensively to get things done. But that just isn't the case right now because the offensive line isn't good enough. And the problem with Iowa is they have a statue at quarterback in Spencer Petras, who is fine, like when he has time to deliver the football, but he doesn't have that this year. And that's on the offensive coordinator and the staff to change things around, and we're not seeing that happen. Obviously, Kirk Ferentz's son, Brian, is the offensive coordinator, and it just hasn't worked. He's been the OC since 2018, and this team, I think, has ranked worse than 86th in yards per play every year he's been the offensive coordinator. Iowa's scored 7 touchdowns offensively this year. They've had 12 turnovers. That's a terrible, terrible number. They average less than 4 yards per play. They would be the first Power 5 offense since 2014 to do so. This is a historically bad unit. And I don't like to cry nepotism or ask for somebody to make a change at offensive coordinator. But if this was any other situation in the country, I would have a new offensive coordinator by now. But since Kirk Ferenz is the head coach, we just probably aren't going to see that change.
Yeah, first, I feel bad for Iowa fans, and second, Iowa defense. They are on the field a lot. Well, it's hard to deny that Texas is getting better under Steve Sarkisian, but it's easy to question how much better that they should be right now. For the 6th time under Sark and the 3rd time this season, the Longhorns blew a second-half lead. We know the result lands in the loss column, but beyond that, why are you considering them a loser for you this week?
Yeah, it's just the continuation of what's been really an inability for Texas to win games, I think is the best way to put it. They've only played 14 Big 12 games, and as you said, they've blown second half leads in 6 of them. So that's a terrible percentage on its own. Steve Sarkisian, I believe, is 1-6 in true road games in his Texas career. Like Texas just hasn't figured out a way to finish, and they haven't figured out a way to play well away from home. And in order for Texas to take that next step, they have to get past that mental barrier, and it feels like it's been there ever since Mac Brown left, way back in 2014, and really even before. This team has struggled to win in adverse environments. And until that happens, and until Texas can turn the page and finish those games, Texas isn't going to return to national relevance. People were talking about Texas as a playoff contender like a week ago, even with 2 losses. That was premature. And I would say it was premature because of this reason. Like Texas still hasn't shown the ability to finish games in difficult situations. And until that changes, Texas and Steve Sarkisian won't get Texas back to where it used to be.
Kind of like the opposite of what we're seeing at South Carolina can be the difference between winning close games and losing close games. Well, you can't turn the ball over 8 times and not get mentioned as a loser from the weekend. The Miami Herald called it an epic new low for Mario Cristobal, also writing that he should be embarrassed by the 24-point loss to Duke. We know rebuilds take time, but how far away does it feel after a loss like that?
Yeah, Miami doesn't feel close. I would never like call out a head coach in their first year. Like you're dealing with a lot, but Mario Cristobal gets paid a ton. Like he has 2 really high paid coordinators, which might end up changing after this season in terms of those selections. And like he has the transfer portal to rebuild the roster quickly. We saw Mike Elko take over a team that was worse than Miami last year. And I believe Duke is 5-3 right now and Miami's 3-4. And this was a really embarrassing defeat for Miami. I think that's the most turnovers by a Power 5 team since 2008. And on top of everything else, like starting quarterback Tyler Van Dyke left the game early with a shoulder injury. And I don't really know what the long-term prognostication is on that. But based on what I'm hearing early, it didn't sound great. So Miami's not in a good spot, and it's probably not going to get any easier anytime soon. They've got some really difficult games ahead of it. I still believe in Mario Cristobal long-term. His history shows he will recruit his way out of bad situations. He will figure a way to turn over the roster. But it's hard to look at an 8 turnover game and think a team is playing well and playing hard for its head coach. Like this was a really, really tough look for Miami.
Certainly tough look for Miami, but you have been hard at work all season long, and especially this weekend. You have all sorts of great stories up on 247sports.com right now. Chris, you got a feature on Hendon Hooker, a look at the youngest head coach in all of college football, midseason awards, much more. Thank you so much for all of your great insight. Go check out all of it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube page all season long for all things college football.